video. Okay. Welcome to our second inaugural Get Naked with Your Marketing interview series with Coach Tactics. I'm Chala Dincoy, and today with us we have Marc Mawhinney from Natural Born Coaches, and he is going to get naked with his marketing, even though he and I have just met literally 3 minutes ago, but he's down with getting naked and he's going to tell us how it is. But first, we want to know, what is it that you do for a living?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Chala. I guess I'm glad to see, when I heard naked marketing, I was kind of worried it was a webcam show or something like that. So, yeah, that's good. You know, the beach body's not ready yet, you know, here in Canada with our winters. So.
But the hair looks good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, my quick Cole's notes for me, I essentially coach coaches, you know, for lack of a better word, which I know that's kind of, I tell people that if I'm at a barbecue or something and they say, what do you do? And they want that, you know, answer that can fit into a box. You know, I'm an accountant, I'm a, you know, an insurance guy or whatever. And I say I coach coaches, and then they're thinking about the athletic coaches and everything else. And you have to get into a whole thing. You know what it's like being in the same realm. So I got started my background's really as an entrepreneur. I started in real estate when I was 21 years old and spent spring chicken. Yeah, 21. I looked about 14 at the time. So now that being said, going through a couple business closures and a bunch of other stuff, I've got a few more gray hairs and I don't look 14 anymore, so we're all good. But yeah, I went through, you know, the whole real estate thing. I built a company up with about 100 employees, and then that crashed down. And from the ashes, I was helped by coaches and mentors, and that's how I got started in the coaching industry, because I wanted to, you know, pay it forward and it was just such a great industry to be in, to help other people and everything. Right. So that's how I got into coaching. Now, I guess we can get into a little bit later on with the talk, but I got started with a very broad niche, working with any entrepreneur, and you know how it is. I'm sure you've heard the story once or twice over the years. Yeah, so I had the old theory that everybody has is, hey, I'll cast a net as wide as possible. It means more clients, and, you know, I'll be rolling in money and I'll be retired within a month, and, you know, sipping cocktails on the beach and coaching people from a you know, a beach towel. But basically, as time went on, I realized I had to narrow down and niche down, which goes right with the message that you have. And I looked at who I enjoyed working with, and that's where working with coaches came from, because I had a couple coaches I was helping, and I thought, not that I didn't like my other clients, but I said, which of them do I do I really like working with, and who do I get? And I really got coaches, and I thought I really want to help coaches. So that's where it came from, and then, you know, launched a podcast and everything else from there.
That's really cool. So what you're doing is something called like interview marketing, isn't it?
The podcast is interview based, but in terms of marketing, my approach was started with throw enough spaghetti at the wall and see how much of it sticks. The spaghetti theory there or whatever, and now it's a little bit, definitely more niche.
Yeah, no, because I mean, what you're doing is actually people, I mean, and I'm sure you do this, you get clients from the people that you're interviewing because you get to know them. And it's actually one of the things that we use with my clients is, and that's what I'm doing is as well, although I'm starting with my friends and with my network, is you talk to your ideal clients, get to know them, get to meet them, and then feature them so that then you have a relationship.
Yeah, and a really big point to make is when I was planning the podcast, I wasn't even thinking of the guests coming on the show, because my thought is, well, they're all successful coaches. They're not going to need me. And that was probably the wrong approach, because, as you know, successful people are usually the most open to coaching. That's how they became successful. And a lot of the past guests, pretty much every past guest I've spoken with has coaches, because they know they need coaches to stay on track and get to the next level. So the past guests that I'm talking to, some of them now, about collaborating on some kind of joint venture things and some book projects and everything else, but it's been really cool, and a few of them have talked about getting me to help them out. And it's interesting with my coaching. I'm even doing a little bit of coaching to help them with their podcast, to get podcasts up and going. Because I learned quite a bit from doing a daily podcast. So it's open up a whole new world of neat opportunities I wasn't expecting when I started the podcast.
How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it since mid-November of 2014, but it feels like it was mid-November of 2005 or so, because I'm doing a daily show. So, it's a lot of work. So as we're recording this, I'm up somewhere around show number 60. I think it was show number 59 was released today. So by doing a daily show, you're really cramming in, getting a lot of experience in a short time. So right now I've essentially done more podcasting than most people have been podcasting for a year or two, because they're doing it once a week or so. So they get about 50 or so episodes a year. So I'm going to have, 300 and some, 400 shows every single year. And it's really going to ramp up my experience rather quickly in a short amount of time.
You do anything that often?
Yeah.
It's like brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
My God.
It's I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. If you feel like you can do it, then great. But it is a ton of work. Like, it's a lot more. And it's I've always been told I'm kind of the type of guy that bites off more than I can chew. So I've said to people before, I'm like the typical entrepreneur that jumps off the cliff and then tries to assemble a plane on the way down and hope that I can get it together before I go crashing. So that's how it was with podcasting. I just jumped in. I joined a great community. John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire. Not sure if you've listened to that one, but it's a great podcast. It was a real big influence of mine. It's a daily one it's more of a general entrepreneur podcast. And I'd known John Lee virtually, just talking a little bit on Facebook and other things. So when I decided back last September I wanted to use podcasting to get the message out further for my coaching, I knew that he was the guy to talk to, because he was, pro at it. He's killing it. He's doing really well. And so his community was real big help. And I just spent a couple months of putting the nose in the books and studying as much as I could on podcasting, and then got it launched in November.
Good for you. I did not know it was every day. Oh my God, Mark.
Yeah.
That's craziness.
Yeah, my straitjacket's in the closet there.
Wow. Oh my God.
It gets easier. I will say, as you get going on, it does get significantly easier. Now, it is still a lot of work. Like, one of the coaches I'm working with to help him set up his podcast, when we had our initial kind of strategy session, I said, how long do you have per week to put into a podcast? Because he wants to do a weekly one, just one show a week. Yeah. And he said, well, I want to keep it under 2 hours. Now, that's not a 2-hour show. That's 2 hours for him to record a show, to do the show notes, to do the editing and everything else. And I think he's in for a bit of a rude awakening. I said, I'm not going to BS you. I said, you're looking at a lot more than 2 hours. Like I said, you're probably looking 10 if you're lucky, but even a little more. And you know what it's like when you have a show and a coaching business, kind of all blends together. So it's hard to say, if I'm doing work for a couple hours, is this for the podcast or for coaching? Because it's probably for a little bit of both. It's marketing the podcast and the coaching and everything else. So it is a time commitment, but I'm a huge ambassador for podcasts, or for what you're doing with video. You're very brave there. Like, I don't have to put my makeup on generally or do my hair. Or,
Yeah. There was that one time I looked like George Hamilton when I did my own makeup. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I had right up till New Year, I had a beard, so I said I'll shave it. Yeah, go figure. I said I don't want to look like a caveman. It wasn't like a huge beard or Santa Claus or anything, but it's video is a lot more work than audio, because with mine I set up, I click record, and if I have to edit, it's very easy. But as you know, if something happens where the mirror behind you comes crashing down and hits you in the head, well, first it's probably going to go on YouTube and it's going to go viral. But
I want that to happen.
Yeah, you can't really edit that out, and with audio it's much easier to work out those kinks. And so a daily show by video would be very difficult. Audio's tough enough, but video would be very difficult every day.
Well, you see, this is why it's naked marketing. If it happens, it's happened. I edit nothing.
Oh, good.
Well, it's naked, right?
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Stay authentic. I do that as well. Like, I try not the naked marketing, but well, I try not to edit too much. Like, some people really take the knife out to their podcast and they edit out anything that's not perfect. It's and it doesn't sound real or authentic. So when I first started, I was editing out the the ums, the so's, all the filler words and stuff, and that's just natural. People have those filler words, so it didn't come across as natural. Now I just leave it in. Unless something happens happens at my house is like on fire, or there's like, you know, some sort of ambulance or fire truck flying down the road, I'm keeping it probably in there.
Yeah, that's good. Good to know. Yeah, you know what? I'm too old and too lazy to not be authentic anymore.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and
it's a lot of work, perfectionism. Yeah, to try to be perfect and try to put up images and everything else. I mean, obviously you want to look presentable, so I didn't want to show up today. We're doing this chat. I wouldn't show up with a ripped up T-shirt and, you know, pizza all over my face and, you know, everything else or whatever. You want to look presentable, but you also don't want to be perfect. Try to be so perfect that you don't do anything or you drive yourself nuts.
Absolutely. And so this is a great segue. Thank you. For asking about your worst marketing mistake. Now, you said you've had some doozies because you've gone out of business, you've up again, you've done everything since you were 14. Look like 14, but you're 20. So tell us, you know, what was your worst marketing mistake? Was it a niching thing?
I mean, on the coaching end, the niche was probably by not choosing a niche early. And part of that comes with experience. Like, you can't expect to start a coaching business and have everything nailed perfectly right out of the gate. Like, you know, it takes time to kind of feel it out and see who you like working with and what connects with you. So the coaching end of it, that would have been the marketing mistake. Is, as you know, with any coach, when you get started, you're doing the pulse test. So if anyone has a pulse or if they can fog a mirror, great, I'll work with you. Come on in. And the problem, you've heard all this before. You're attracting people who aren't the right fit for you. They're going to drain you like your emotions, emotionally, they're going to drain you and everything else. So it's not the way to do it. You not saying that I'm so strict that I'm only working with, there's one person per state or province that I could work with, because you got to be a business, but you do have to really narrow it down. The other end of it, before my coaching career, as you mentioned, through the years in real estate, it went through not one but two business closures. And the problem with the first one was I'd built up to 100 employees and everything was rolling. Our market share was just, was really skyrocketing. And for years, I'd always promoted my name. Everything was Marc Mawhinney sells the city. That was the slogan. And that's great when things are going well. Like the phone was ringing and I was just on fire, getting all these listings and everything. The problem when I did that, when you go through an actual business closure in a fairly small city, it's not a Toronto or anything, is if your name's attached to it, then you got to take the good, the bad that comes with that as well. And all of a sudden, my name was out on hundreds and hundreds of signs around town, and suddenly we're out of business. Well, that's a negative part of it too. So I'm not suggesting that your audience be afraid to use your name, because obviously I'm putting my name out there now. But what I realized for me is I'm building up the Natural Born Coaches brand. Marc Mawhinney's just part of it, and I'm driving it, but it's not all the Marc Mawhinney show. It's actually a different coach every day that's in there, and they're promoting it to their audience, and they're kind of the star of that show as well. So it's a nice mix there where I'm kind of combining the two.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I'm kind of against people using their name as their company name, because it's not searchable on Google in terms of when somebody is in pain for, like yesterday, my client just got a new client because we rebranded him as, he used to have his own name as the URL.
Yep.
We rebranded as fooddistributionguy.com based on research we did, because that was the Google words that people are using to get help around that. So, people wouldn't be Googling your name if they're searching for coaching podcast. They would search for coaching podcast, which,
it's a little different with real estate. You're kind of attached to that name, and that's where part of it came from. But with any business, I would recommend that you and come up with a unique name too. Like, I've seen so many names that are rather dull, and boring, and they're generic. And I like names that are a little different. Like, I had a guest on the show recently. He's a cash flow expert, so he's a financial coach. Basically, his name's Chris Miles, and his company name's Money Ripples. Well, when you hear Money Ripples, you're just picturing, the rippling out. You make some money and it ripples out further and further. It's a great name, so I really like that. I've had another guest who's actually the first guest ever on the show, Hugh Little from Florida, and Hugh's Red Cap Sales Coaching is the name of his company. He wears a red cap literally everywhere he goes, so I'm sure he wears it in the bathroom. He's in the shower,
Too much information.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but he's really taken that and he's owned it. So he's known as the red cap guy. And I talk to a lot of people in the run of a day, and I sometimes I'm like, oh, who was that person? Because I'm booking all these interviews and everything else. But with Hugh, right away, I'm like, oh, that's a red cap guy. Now I've gotten to know him very well. So now suddenly there's going to be hundreds of people wearing little red newsboy caps around or something like that. But I would say if you can get something like that, it's a great way for people to remember you.
Yeah. But I love how aware you are that niching was your first and biggest mistake.
Yeah.
And and I agree with you that it's the toughest part of having your business, having your practice, is figuring out who is my ideal client and what is my specialty.
Yeah. You've probably heard the term niche till it hurts. I'm sure you've used that a lot. And a big change for me was I took a course from Derek Halpern from Social Triggers. It was actually a blogging course, but it's applicable to any part of a business. And what he recommends doing, which I do with clients, is you get a mind map out where you start with your very general thing. So it could be, in my case, coaching. And then you just keep working down layer after layer. And then when you think you've stopped, you can still go further and further. And now that being said, I'm not so specific that I'm working with red-headed coaches who are left-handed that hail from the west coast of the United States or something, but I've really narrowed it down, and I could probably even go a little further, but I think at this point it's going well where I'm at with it, and we'll evaluate it. But my niche has really gone towards the newer coaches. It's not the 10, 20-year coaches, although I love working with them, but it's really the people that tend to be drawn to me are the ones that are thinking of getting into coaching, or they've been coaching for a year or two, and it's just not really, they're not getting the traction that they want, and they need some help.
Very nice. Okay, so I talk a lot about, the name of our show here today is Naked Marketing. So, I'd love to find out about your biggest fear and saying what you truly think about the state of your profession, or in your marketing, showing your true self, like your face, or your body, or the video.
Yeah.
Like, are you afraid of anything, of standing up for what you truly believe in, or showing yourself?
No, like anybody, I struggle with that at times. Like, I'm really aggressive with social media, for example. I'm very promotional, and it's not all just like me. I'm giving value as well, but I ramped up my social media. I read a book by Grant Cardone, The 10X Rule, and I'm not sure if you've read that one, but it's an awesome book. And he tells a story that you have to basically put in about 10 times the effort and the actions that you think you're going to have to do to get what you want to do. And he talks about setting goals 10 times as high as you should be, and all that other stuff. And that's what I did. So my social media, I'm like, okay, well, I'm putting quite a bit out there, because I've got 50-some thousand followers on Twitter, and I was posting, maybe it was every few hours, putting something out there and being all, nice and fair. I would think I'm not going to bother people and hit them really hard. And then I listened to that book from Grant Cardone and seen other people that are doing well, and I realized, no, I got to do a lot more, because the average life of a tweet, I think 7-8 minutes, somewhere in around that ballpark. So I've really ramped up things, and I've held back worrying about what people think. A lot of people are thinking, well, I don't want to lose people off Facebook. They'll unfriend me or something silly like that. Well, do you really want them on your list? If you're having to worry about what this person or this group of people is thinking every time you're posting something on social media, just drop them. I'll mention a really great book. I've mentioned in other interviews before. I don't get paid a commission on this, by the way. This book's called Thick Face, Black Heart.
Okay.
Ching-Ning Chu wrote this back in the early 90s, and it's not really well known here in the Western world. It's an Asian business book, essentially. It's been called The Asian Think and Grow Rich. And what this book talks about is you're developing part of what a thick face, black heart is. You're developing a shield against worrying about the opinions of others. You're so you believe so strongly in your own vision that it doesn't matter what they're saying, it's not going to affect you in any way. And that's how I really run my business. So I do the way that I want to do it, and I don't worry about the peanut gallery. And I've assembled, my share of haters and critics and everything else, going through business closures and things. But at the end of the day, if you're not taking risks out there in business and you're not putting yourself out there, then you're not going to achieve anything. So especially for coaches and things like that, you got to get your message out there and share your dream with other people.
Yeah. I agree. Wonderful. But it's good to know that you're human and that you did have some, misgivings.
Well, that was when I first crawled out of the hole from the business closure and started to look at, okay, where's the next steps in my life? What kind of journey am I going to take? There was some hesitation because I thought, well, who am I to be a coach? I've gone through a business closure and all this other stuff. And somebody said something very valuable to me. He said, don't look at just this small little part of your life. Look at the 10 or 12 years previous that you had where you had no stumbles and you accomplished a lot. And don't forget about that. There's so much value in that experience as well. So that was a great point. And I thought, you know what, that probably makes me a stronger coach where I've gone through ups and downs as opposed to somebody that's just sort of gone through without any stumbles. I always find the most interesting guest on my show. I always ask people, what's the biggest obstacle you've run into as a coach? And I've had a couple guests say, well, no, I haven't had any obstacles. It's been all smooth sailing.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, okay. And don't get me wrong, they're great guests, good for them or whatever, but I think people want to hear more of your story. They like hearing the story, someone that stumbled and then made that comeback and has an interesting story to tell. So I would advise that your people watching don't be afraid of that. Just put yourself out there.
And I don't think there's any human that doesn't struggle with any obstacles, whether internal or external. So those people were lying.
Yeah.
And they did not want to be vulnerable, so they are not invited to this show.
Or they may be thinking that stumble or an obstacle has to be this huge crisis and catastrophic thing or whatever. So maybe they think, well, it's not that interesting. It's not a big enough obstacle or whatever. I prefer people that are open. Like if I'm working with someone that's as a coach that's helping me with some sort of aspect of my business, it doesn't turn me off at all if they say that they've gone through these issues because I'm like, great, that means they're going to help me avoid the same thing. They've already gone through it. I don't want someone that's been smooth sailing or whatever because I'm thinking, well, what's his deal? Has he done anything or he or she?
And they won't be able to understand what not to do or when they won't be able to empathize as well when you fail.
Yeah.
Right? So I love that.
Exactly.
I love that. It's true. I want a loser for a coach. Okay. So what is the one secret to your marketing success that you'd like to share?
I think the biggest thing for me is the consistency. I'm very consistent. So when I decide on, now you have to make sure that you've got the right message, and that comes from getting out in the marketplace and testing it. Like I mentioned before, my previous message wasn't gaining the traction that I wanted, but once I find something that's working, especially I constantly hammer it home, and it's just every day, multiple times, it's just staying on message. And that's how I did so well in real estate is I got the slogan, and this is before the days of social media. This was back in 2000 when I started in real estate, and I was just sending out these yellow postcards. I was killing forest upon forest, sending out,
They still do.
I'll get hate mail from environmentalists. I actually did get the odd call from people saying, stop leaving these or sending me these postcards. You're killing a tree or whatever. And I would say, well, do you call a department store that's sending you flyers or anyone else? But of course you don't. But
Sears catalog.
I've said that, the Wish book or whatever, and but they think, oh well, this is a local real estate agent, so I'll get at him and eat up some of his time complaining. So, but with that, I consistently same time of day, same day every week. Those postcards were going out, and it's the same way with the show. For example, every day with my podcast at 5:30 a.m. Eastern time. It's going out, it's hitting the website, so people know to expect it. And one of the problems that people run into is they start doing all this action in the beginning, but then they don't get the results that they want, so then they hold back and they hum and haw. So in the podcasting world, they may release 5 or 10 podcasts in that first week. They're consistent, and then they don't podcast for a few weeks, and then they release 5 and none, and then they release 2, and they're all over the place, and people don't know if they're coming or going. So people want to know that you're consistent, that you're serious, and then just keep at it and stay consistent.
Yeah, very good. And do you hear from people back consistently? Like when you send it out, you make sure that someone's going to say something that day?
Well, what's happened now with after 60 shows, it's interesting. Like I did get a lot back in the early stages, I've been really happy for where I'm at just 60 days into it, because I just look at the growth with the downloads and the comments and the newsletter growth and things like that, coming from it. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. I can't say there's really been any days where I haven't got some sort of feedback. Now, it doesn't mean I'm getting a gushing email every day, although that would be nice. But I do get some nice emails. Like I've gotten some from the UK and Australia, and people coaches saying, "Yeah, we listen every day," and that's really motivating for me. But,
that's lovely.
I mean, someday they could be just, maybe it's a few people retweeting, the status or commenting or liking or whatever. And that's very motivating. And as you know, in the personal development field, if you know that you're impacting people, there's the fuel and the energy that you need to keep doing it.
That is nice. A couple of people crying would be nice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle to this consistency?
Well, one of the big obstacles is there's so many options, so many things that you can do, like so many ways that you can skin a cat, I guess you could say. So if somebody's getting in, let's say, to become a coach, you've got all these bright, shiny objects all over the place. You've got people saying, oh, you got to do YouTube videos, get a YouTube channel, or oh, you got to do webinars. Webinars the way to go. Oh, it's podcasts or whatever. And so they get all frazzled. And then you got a billion social media networks that you can choose from as well. And it's really confusing. One of the books I recommend, I just read it recently, which really helped, is The One Thing by Gary Keller. Not sure if you've read that one or not. And as you know, that's all about getting your focus to that one thing that's your main goal with what you're doing, and you block out everything else. You put up the horse blinders, and you don't let that invade the space. So I've gotten a lot better now at time blocking and protecting what I know I need to be doing. But that's the biggest obstacle people have, is there's just so many choices, and they think they have to be good at all of them. Like me, I have a Pinterest account, I have an Instagram account, but I'm not using them to the same effect as Facebook and Twitter and so on. So I know where my strengths are and where I'm getting most traction. Now, if I want to get into cupcakes and things like that, I could start Pinterest. Now I know there's businesses doing Pinterest, so I'm kidding. But there's no way I can do every social media network the same way as I do with what I do with Facebook or Twitter.
So focused.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Just you can test the things in the early stages, see what you enjoy and what you're getting some results from, but then narrow down and really get good at that before you spread yourself too thin, because there's no way you can keep up with all of these bright, shiny objects.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if I could tattoo one word on my forehead for my clients, that would be focus.
Exactly.
Because, I'm a niching coach,
Yep.
and that's what I do is I help them niche, and then, we have to focus their activities. You're right. You're so right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So how do we reach you, Marc?
Well, the best spot's to head to naturalborncoaches.com. Like, that's the central hub, the main website where you can find connections to all those social media accounts we talked about and everything else. So it's Marc at naturalborncoaches.com, Marc with a C if you want to email me, or just pop over to the website. There's a bunch of ways to connect.
Awesome. And what one advice do you want to leave us with?
I mean, it's hard to say one piece of advice. I'll say watch your show religiously. That's the key to success.
Good plug.
The best thing I would say, which I found in 2014, the word that I had in 2014 was action. I always have it sounds corny probably, but I define my year by a word. So
No, I've heard of it.
yeah, a lot of people do it, and it worked for me. So 2014 was all action. So I was just out there, just once again, came up before, but I was throwing spaghetti at the wall, just doing different things, and then found out what was working and got traction. My word for 2015 is impact. So now that I've gotten this action and done all this stuff, 2015 is more about, okay, it's not being busier and everything else. It's taking some of the lessons from the one thing and other things I've been learning, and now focus on impacting people.
Yeah. And so, I mean, one of the things that I always hear from my coaches is just do anything at all instead of doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. I'm preparing, my coaching program is going, basically I'm starting a webinar, like we talked about, everyone's looking at webinars. And when I first looked at it, I had the standard, 3-month coaching program, and then I'm thinking, well, this would be great for 6 months, and they're all great. But what I decided to do with that offering for the webinar is condense it down into 1 month. which is packing a lot into that month. But what I was finding with a lot of coaches is there was a little too much of, well, let's start getting into coaching, take 6 months, working on whatever, our website and other things and our logo and all that. Then we'll get out and start talking to people. And the neat thing when I put this program together is it's about getting people out there as quick as possible to make mistakes as quick as possible, but they're going to get opportunities as well much sooner. So they're in and out of that program in a month. It's not a 6-month, a 12-month program. Although if they want ongoing support, great, I'd love to work with them. But that's what I'm doing now with it, just to get the coaches out there, get their shingle hung up and open for business and get making money.
Good. We call that suppository coaching.
Yes.
You just put it in and you're done.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Great. That's really good.
Yeah, well, you're not taking 2-3 years and you can always learn. You're going to be learning as you're doing it, but you really need to get out there and start working with people. That's the only way you're going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things we do with clients is we do personal interviews to test out the niches.
Yeah.
So that they're able to accelerate their niche selection within 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
And most of them end up getting clients while they're doing the research. It's craziness. So you're doing the right thing.
I had a guest on the show, Remy Chaussee. She's a coach in California, and she showed a really neat. She has it's a graph that's it's not almost, I guess I'll say sales funnel for lack of a better word, but it's a process. And what she does is it's a 30-day process that she walked us through it on the show, and it's designed to fail as quick as possible. So if it's going to fail, you're not wasting 6 months with a failing strategy. So it's like a clockwise around the clock. If you hit a block and, this isn't working, we're not doing it, okay, then you can start that process again. So in the run of a year, she's constantly restarting these new funnels or circles, basically. And then that way you're not wasting time being stuck in that limbo of, why isn't it working? Woe is me. I hate my life and my business and everything sucks. Instead, you're getting going to make money sooner.
So what's the name of the program that you're launching?
That's a good question. I've narrowed it down to a couple names. Okay. I just had a Skype meeting with the person I'm working with on it that's helping me set it up, because that's another thing. I didn't want to get tied down with the tech end of it. I'm fairly techy, but I said I'm dealing with the podcast. I don't want to deal with glitches and everything with the webinar. So it's going to be something along the lines 30 days to coaching success, because that's a goal. It's essentially four weekly strategy sessions, going to be 1 to 2 hours per time, and then they're by the end of 30 days they're rolling, and they've got a business, they're ready to get going. So it's just 30 days for that program.
Yeah. Well, give it a sexy name though. Give it like Kick in the Ass or Kickstarter or something, a sexy name. I like it.
That's good. That's a working title.
Yeah. Very good. Well, this has been such a pleasure. I'm so glad that, you reached out to me to do an interview for you, and we ended up doing an interview for me as well.
Exactly. That's another piece of advice I'll leave for your people is don't be afraid to reach out to people who can help you or you can help, and just connect them, because I've connected with some people that I've read their books and everything else. They've been influential in my life, and just they've been so open to helping just by reaching out and saying, hey, can you come on the show, or vice versa, can I come on your show? So don't be afraid. That's the whole point of this technology. Put it to use and make connections that way.
And when you're vulnerable and you're reaching out, most of the time people reach back, right?
They do. And that's how my podcast started. Before I launched a podcast for that whole last year, I was talking to a few successful coaches off the record every single day. And I was just saying, hey, can I Skype with you for a few minutes and pick your brain? And I thought that's a shame. I really should be recording these.
Recording it.
Yeah, there's so many hours of content. I'm going to cry here because I have probably hundreds and hundreds of hours of unrecorded content. But it was from that process I thought I'll record it, let the listeners be a fly on the wall, and get value from it as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, all the best.
You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.